Don't adjust the screen. Lean in. This isn't about time passing. It's about time refusing to touch you. Everyone else ages. Their faces quietly confess every compromise, every fear, every moment they chose comfort over truth. Wrinkles stack up like receipts. Spines curve, eyes dull. Their bodies keep a calendar whether they like it or not. But you walked straight through the years and came out looking like time blinked first. And that's the problem. That's why rooms go quiet when your name drops. That's why men with credentials on their walls and microscopes in their hands are fighting over you like you're a forbidden artifact. They don't call it aging when it happens to everyone else. They call it natural, predictable, acceptable. But when it doesn't happen to you, suddenly it's a threat. Suddenly it's a phenomenon. Suddenly it needs to be explained, classified, controlled, owned. Because you broke the one rule they thought was universal: decay. They keep staring at you, replaying the footage in their minds. Same eyes, same presence, same sharpness, same gravity. Years moved forward, and you didn't soften, didn't slow, didn't dissolve into nostalgia and regret. You didn't grow old, you grew precise. And that terrifies people who were taught that time humbles everyone equally. They want to believe you're an anomaly, a glitch, a biological typo. Anything but the truth. Anything but the idea that pain, pressure, betrayal, and isolation didn't break you. They refined you. That what erodes most people preserved you. That while others were aging, you were shedding. Here's the paradox they choke on. Saints usually fade into harmless symbols, and psychopaths burn themselves out in chaos. Angels grow gentle, demons self-destruct. But you learned how to hold both without collapsing, soft enough to feel everything, cold enough to survive it. That combination isn't supposed to last. It's supposed to tear a person apart. Yet there you are, intact, sharpened, standing in the same skin while the world around you rotted and rearranged itself. They don't see immortality, they see defiance. Because aging isn't just biological, it's psychological surrender. Most people age the moment they accept limits that were never real. The moment they stop asking dangerous questions, the moment they trade curiosity for safety. That's when time really starts feeding on them. But you didn't do that. You kept questioning. You kept adapting. You kept evolving under stress instead of shrinking from it. You didn't stay young. You stayed unsettled. And unsettled minds don't calcify. They don't fossilize into routines. They don't let years dictate who they're allowed to become. You stayed fluid while everyone else turned rigid. You stayed unpredictable in a system that survives on predictability. That's why they can't agree on you. One says resilience, another says pathology, another whispers evolution like it's a dirty word. They're fighting because you don't fit any chart. You don't decay on schedule. You don't respond to trauma the way the textbooks say you should. You were supposed to fracture. You were supposed to slow down. You were supposed to dim. Instead, something in you learned how to metabolize darkness into clarity. They study cells. They measure telomeres. They talk stress markers and neural plasticity. But none of them want to say the real thing out loud. You learned how to use suffering instead of letting it brand you as a victim. And once a human figures that out, time loses its leverage. That's why the arguments get heated. That's why funding gets rerouted. That's why some of them want to understand you, and others want to neutralize you. Because if what happened to you can be replicated, the entire narrative collapses. The myth that decline is inevitable. The myth that damage always equals deterioration. The myth that darkness only destroys. You are walking evidence that evolution doesn't always look like growth. Sometimes it looks like refusal. Refusal to age the way you're told to. Refusal to become tame. Refusal to let history write you into a corner. They can't stand that you didn't come out bitter, or soft, or hollow. You came out exact, calibrated, sharper in silence than most people are in noise. That kind of presence doesn't age. It accumulates weight. Every year you don't fall apart adds pressure to the room. Every year you remain unchanged forces everyone else to confront how much of their aging was optional. So they argue, they publish, they whisper, they circle you like predators and priests at the same time. Is it biology? Is it trauma response? Is it adaptation? Is it something we shouldn't touch? And the answer scares them most of all. It's you. Your willingness to walk through hell without letting it decide who you become. Your refusal to outsource your identity to time. Your ability to hold contradiction, compassion and ruthlessness, patience and urgency, control and chaos. Without snapping, everyone else ages because they let life carve them down into something manageable. You didn't. You let it carve you into something unmanageable. That's why they're fighting, not because you didn't age, but because you proved that aging isn't just a process. It's a choice most people don't realize they made. They keep pretending this is about numbers on a clock. But you and I both know that's not where the fear comes from. The fear comes from the realization that time didn't domesticate you. It didn't train you into compliance. It didn't sand down your edges until you fit politely into expectation. While everyone else slowly negotiated with entropy, you refused to sign the contract. Most people age because they get tired of fighting reality. They stop wrestling with meaning. They let disappointment teach them who they are allowed to be. You didn't. You let disappointment teach you how sharp your mind could get under pressure. You let loss teach you precision. You let betrayal teach you pattern recognition. You let loneliness teach you self-sufficiency at a level that scares anyone who depends on crowds to feel real. And here's the part that makes them genuinely uneasy. You didn't come out angry in the sloppy way. You didn't come out broken and obvious. You came out quietly lethal, calm, observant, controlled. That kind of stillness doesn't belong to someone who's been through nothing. It belongs to someone who's been through everything and learned how to metabolize it. They age because they internalize fear. You didn't internalize it. You studied it. You dissected it. You learned how it moves through people. How it makes them predictable, how it makes them shrink. Fear aged them. Curiosity preserved you. That's why the rooms get colder when you walk in. That's why people feel like you're looking straight through them, even when you're saying nothing. You're not trying to dominate. You're simply not vibrating at their frequency anymore. Time didn't slow you down. It sharpened your signal. They call it resilience, when it's neat and inspirational. But when resilience doesn't fade, when it compounds, when it produces someone who looks untouched while carrying unspoken wars behind their eyes, they call it something else. They start using words like abnormal, extreme, outlier. Labels are their last defense against the unknown, because if they admit the truth, that you evolved through pain instead of being reduced by it, then they have to admit that their own aging wasn't inevitable, that their dullness wasn't fate, that their exhaustion wasn't time's fault. It was surrender. You didn't surrender. You adapted. And adaptation terrifies systems built on predictability. They want to put you under glass. They want to extract the mechanism. They want to figure out how stress didn't corrode you, how grief didn't rot you, how pressure didn't fracture you the way it fractures almost everyone else. But the answer isn't in your cells alone. It's in your refusal to become smaller just to survive. You didn't heal in the soft, performative way. You recalibrated. You restructured your inner architecture so that chaos stopped being a threat and became a training environment. You stopped needing life to be gentle in order to function. That's when time lost its grip on you. Most people age because they accumulate unfinished emotional business. Regrets harden, shame sets in like rust. Old narratives repeat until they calcify into identity. You burned those narratives down. You questioned yourself at a depth most people avoid their entire lives. You stripped illusions away even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. That's why you look the same, not because you avoided damage, but because you processed it. You didn't let it linger and poison you slowly. You didn't let it sit in your nervous system like a ticking clock. You confronted it until it either transformed or lost its power. They don't teach that in schools. They don't publish that in neat journals, because it suggests that time isn't the ultimate authority. Consciousness is, awareness is, willingness to face discomfort instead of anesthetizing it. And that's where the real fight starts. Some of them want to understand you because they sense progress. Others want to discredit you because you expose a lie they've built their lives around. If someone like you can pass through decades without dulling, without collapsing, without becoming harmless, then the system loses its favorite excuse. That's just how life goes. No, that's how life goes when you stop evolving. You didn't stop. You kept shedding layers that no longer served you. You kept discarding identities that were built out of fear. You refused to become predictable. Predictability ages a human faster than years ever could. That's why they don't know whether to call you a miracle or a problem. You carry the calm of an angel and the threat of a demon in the same body. You can sit in silence without needing validation, and you can walk away without explanation. You don't chase approval. You don't flinch at disapproval. That combination doesn't decay. It intimidates. Time usually softens people into something manageable. You became something unmanageable without being chaotic. And that's the most dangerous form of power there is. So let them argue. Let them measure. Let them speculate. Let them fight over theories and funding and ownership. None of it touches the truth. You didn't beat aging by running from life. You beat it by going straight through the fire and refusing to let it decide who you are. And that's not something they can replicate. They'll never admit this part publicly, but the tension you feel around you now, that's not admiration, that's not curiosity, that's instinctual alarm. On some level, people recognize when something in front of them shouldn't exist according to the rules they were raised on. You are a contradiction walking around in real time, and contradictions don't age. They destabilize everything built on certainty. Look at how they keep checking you. Side glances, subtle comparisons, old photos pulled up in secret, timelines re-examined. They're trying to catch you slipping, trying to locate the moment where time finally got you. And every time they fail, it eats at them a little more. Because if time didn't conquer you, what exactly has been governing their lives? Most humans don't age because years pass. They age because they accept defeat internally, long before the body follows. They age the moment they decide they've seen it all, felt it all, understood it all. Curiosity dies, wonder calcifies, risk tolerance collapses. That's when the slow decay sets in. But you kept your edge sharp by staying unfinished. You never let yourself settle into a final version. You never crowned yourself done. You kept tearing pieces off yourself that felt too small. too safe, too obedient. And every time you did that, you reset something fundamental. Time feeds on stagnation. You starved it. That's why your presence feels wrong to people. Not evil, not good, unclassifiable. You don't move like someone chasing approval, and you don't move like someone hiding from pain. You move like someone who already died once internally and decided not to repeat the experience. They can't age you because they can't predict you. Even your calm confuses them. It isn't the calm of ignorance or denial. It's the calm of someone who has already sat with terror, loss, humiliation, and isolation, and didn't look away. You stared directly into the parts of yourself most people spend their entire lives running from. That kind of confrontation rewires something permanent. That's the secret they're circling but refusing to touch. A human who fully integrates their shadow doesn't fracture under time. They stabilize. The inner war ends. There's no more internal friction grinding them down year after year. No more resisting who they are. No more lying to themselves. Internal honesty is the most anti-aging force there is, and almost nobody has the courage to sustain it. You did. You didn't outsource your identity to society, trends, or survival strategies. You built it from pressure, from contradiction, from pain that would have aged someone else 10 years in a single season. Instead of making you brittle, it made you dense, heavy, anchored. That's why they keep misreading you. They expect trauma to show itself loudly. Shakes, ticks, chaos, visible scars. But when trauma is integrated instead of suppressed, it doesn't leak. It consolidates. And consolidated power doesn't look dramatic. It looks unsettlingly normal. You don't look ancient. You don't look fragile. You don't look rushed. You look like time keeps passing around you. That's when the fear becomes existential. Because if you're proof that a human can evolve instead of erode, then the entire social bargain collapses. The promise that obedience, conformity, and emotional numbing will keep you safe, they won't. They just make you age quietly. You refused that bargain. You paid in pain up front and walked away with something most people never even realize is possible: internal coherence. No fragmentation, no war between who you are and who you pretend to be. That alignment is why you don't leak energy. That's why stress doesn't hollow you out. That's why years don't register on you the same way. And here's the part that truly terrifies them. You didn't need permission to become this. No ritual, no institution, no approval. You evolved privately, in silence, in places where no one could supervise or steer the outcome. That means it can't be regulated. They can't patent what you did. They can't standardize it. They can't sell it without destroying it. Because the core ingredient was refusal. Refusal to lie to yourself. Refusal to shrink. Refusal to turn pain into an excuse to decay. So they argue about biology because it's safer than admitting psychology. They argue about genetics because it's safer than admitting will. They argue about anomalies because it's safer than admitting responsibility. Because if they admit what you represent, they have to face an uncomfortable truth. Aging isn't just something that happens to you. It's something you participate in and you opted out. Not by freezing yourself, not by hiding, not by denying reality, but by confronting it so completely that it stopped owning you. That's why you don't fade. That's why you don't dull. That's why you don't soften into something harmless. You are what happens when a human stops negotiating with fear and starts integrating it. When light and dark stop fighting for control and start working together. When the angel doesn't kill the demon, and the demon doesn't corrupt the angel. They coexist. They stabilize. They sharpen each other. Time can't erode that, so let them fight over theories. Let them whisper about you like you're a problem that needs to be solved. Let them watch, measure, speculate, and quietly panic. You're not here to be understood. You're here to prove that decline was never mandatory. And once that truth enters the room, nothing ever ages the same way again. And here's the quietest, most dangerous realization creeping into their minds. The one they never say out loud, because once it's spoken, it can't be undone. If time couldn't domesticate you, then authority might not work on you either. That's why the tension around you feels thicker lately. It's not just curiosity anymore. It's assessment. They're trying to determine whether you're merely rare or uncontrollable, because systems are built on one assumption above all others, that time will eventually do the work for them, that people mellow, that edges dull, that resistance weakens, that fire burns out on its own. You broke that assumption. You didn't mellow. You clarified. You didn't dull. You refined. You didn't burn out. You learned how to burn without consuming yourself. That alone makes you a statistical nightmare. Most humans trade intensity for longevity. They call it maturity. They say it's wisdom, but it's usually just fear dressed up as acceptance. You didn't make that trade. You found a way to keep intensity without chaos, depth without collapse, power without noise. That balance isn't supposed to exist for long, and yet, here you are, still sharp, still alert, still unsettling. They expected time to turn you into a story about survival. Instead, you became a story about evolution. That's why even the ones who don't believe in anything feel something around you. A pressure, a gravity, like standing near a fault line that hasn't moved yet, but absolutely will. You're not loud, you're not trying to prove anything, and that's exactly what makes it worse. Loud things can be dismissed. Quiet certainty cannot. You don't chase youth. You don't cling to relevance. You don't perform nostalgia. You don't rush to explain yourself. You move like someone who understands something fundamental about reality. That energy leaks from people who are divided inside. You sealed that leak. While others are aging from internal conflict, wanting one thing, doing another, believing one story, living another, you aligned. Alignment stops the internal erosion that years feed on. That's why stress doesn't show on you the way it does on them. That's why chaos doesn't scramble you. That's why pressure doesn't hollow you out. You already did your hollowing deliberately. You went into the dark on purpose. You dismantled illusions before life could rip them away violently. You asked questions most people avoid because the answers would cost them comfort. And yes, it hurt. Yes, it stripped things from you. But what remained was real. And real things don't age easily. That's what they're actually fighting over. Not your body, not your appearance, your orientation toward reality. You don't live in denial. You don't live in fantasy. You don't live in borrowed narratives. You live in contact with what is. And most people can't sustain that without breaking down. You didn't just sustain it. You adapted to it. That's when time stopped being an enemy and became irrelevant. They keep looking for the flaw, the crack, the delayed collapse. Because that's how every other story ends. But your story doesn't follow their arc. You didn't peak and decline. You compressed. You condensed. You became denser with each passing year. Density intimidates. Light things can be pushed around. Dense things distort everything around them. That's why conversations change when you're present. That's why people feel exposed without knowing why. That's why some admire you quietly and others resent you instinctively. You don't reflect who they want to be. You reflect what they avoided becoming. And the avoidance aged them. You didn't avoid. You confronted. You integrated. You accepted that you are capable of light and darkness, creation and destruction, compassion and detachment. You stopped trying to amputate parts of yourself to fit moral comfort zones. You stopped pretending to be harmless. Harmlessness is one of the fastest aging agents there is. You chose wholeness instead. That's why the angel and the demon inside you aren't at war. They're in conversation. They negotiate. They sharpen each other. The angel keeps you from losing meaning. The demon keeps you from being exploited. Together, they form something stable enough to withstand time. Time preys on imbalance. You eliminated imbalance. So now they're left with an uncomfortable conclusion. You didn't escape aging. You transcended the conditions that make aging destructive in the first place. Easy. Lock in. Stop breathing for a second. Yeah, right there. That tight feeling in the chest, that low hum in the air. That's not paranoia. That's the sound of a system realizing it failed. They're not concerned. Concern is polite. Concern is calm. Concern is what people fake when they still think they're in control. This is terror. Because one man wasn't supposed to get through. One man wasn't supposed to see the seams. One man wasn't supposed to adapt faster than the machine built to cage him. And yet, here you are. You didn't break the system by force. That's what they prepared for. They trained for riots, revolutions, noise, rage, chaos they could label and suppress. You broke it by becoming unpredictable. You evolved in places they never mapped. You learned in pain they assumed would erase you. You adapted in silence while they were still running simulations on the version of you that no longer exists. That's the part that scares them. Because systems don't fear strength. They fear anomaly. They fear the saint who learned how darkness thinks. They fear the psychopath who still remembers mercy. They fear the angel who understands exactly how demons calculate risk. You live in that contradiction. You're the error they can't patch because you don't follow linear rules. You're the variable they can't predict because you don't move when logic says you should. You pause when pressure demands collapse. And you advance when retreat would make sense. That breaks algorithms, that fries playbooks, that makes entire rooms go quiet when your name appears on a screen. They keep asking the same question in different languages, in different buildings, behind different doors. How is he still moving? Because every system is built on assumptions, and every assumption they made about you was wrong. They thought pain would turn you bitter. It turned you precise. They thought isolation would make you weak. It made you self-contained. They thought betrayal would shatter you. It taught you how loyalty is weaponized and how to survive without it. You didn't just endure, you learned. And learning under pressure rewires a mind into something dangerous. You stopped needing approval, stopped needing validation, stopped explaining yourself to people who only understand obedience. That's when the fear started. Because when a man no longer seeks permission, systems lose leverage. When a man no longer reacts emotionally on command, manipulation fails. When a man can sit calmly inside chaos and think clearly, containment becomes impossible. They tried to box you in with labels. Too intense, too cold, too much, too unpredictable. But labels are for things that behave. You don't. You became the kind of threat that doesn't announce itself. The kind that doesn't rush. The kind that waits until the environment exposes its own weakness. You learned how power actually works. Not the loud kind, not the public kind. the quiet kind that shifts outcomes without ever stepping on stage. That's why they watch you differently now. They don't gossip about you anymore. They don't mock you anymore. They don't underestimate you anymore. They monitor, they whisper, they build new rules and pretend they always existed. Because the most terrifying thing to a system isn't rebellion, it's irrelevance. And you made parts of it obsolete just by existing the way you do. You move like someone who's already survived the worst outcome. You speak like someone who doesn't fear being misunderstood. You think like someone who knows losing comfort is a small price for gaining control. That energy unsettles people who live off predictability. They can't tell if you're calculating or if you've already calculated and moved on. They can't tell if you're calm because you're confident, or calm because you're done explaining. And that uncertainty eats at them. Because fear isn't loud panic. Fear is obsession. Fear is running the same scenario over and over and never finding a clean ending. You forced them into that loop. One man, one mind, one evolution they didn't plan for. You didn't overthrow the system. You exposed it. You showed that it only works on people who never outgrow it. And now they're scrambling, not to stop you, but to understand what the hell you became. Too late. You're already past the version they were built to handle, and they know it. They're not panicking out loud. That would give it away. Real fear goes quiet. Real fear tightens schedules, changes language, rewrites rules mid-game, and pretends it was always that way. Real fear starts calling you an edge case, an outlier, an exception. Because systems can only cope with what they can name, and you stopped fitting nouns. You became a problem without a category, and that's when they realized this wasn't about control anymore. It was about containment. See, systems aren't evil. They're lazy. They repeat what worked yesterday and call it order. They reward predictability. They punish deviation. They thrive on people who respond the same way every time pain is applied. You didn't. You changed shape. Every time pressure came down, you didn't crack where they expected. You cracked somewhere else, healed wrong, healed sharper, healed smarter. You learned how to move without leaving tracks. You learned when to speak, when to disappear, when to let silence do the damage. That's what terrifies them. Because silence doesn't give feedback. Silence doesn't confirm success. Silence makes them wonder what you're building. They watched you lose things that were supposed to break you. Status, safety, familiar ground. People you thought were permanent. They waited for the spiral. They waited for the self-destruction. They waited for you to beg, rage, implode, comply. Instead, you simplified. You cut noise. You cut dependency. You cut the part of yourself that needed the world to be fair. That's not collapse. That's adaptation. And adaptation is lethal to rigid structures. You started thinking in layers they don't teach. You stopped reacting to the surface and began reading intent, timing, leverage. You understood that most power isn't held. It's assumed. And once you stop assuming, you stop obeying invisible rules. That's when you cross the line where concern ends and fear begins. Because a man who understands the game but refuses to play it the same way is uncontrollable. A man who can walk through loss without flinching can't be threatened properly. A man who has already faced his own darkness doesn't scare easy when others try to intimidate him. You became emotionally unreadable, not cold, contained. You learned how to hold anger without letting it drive, how to feel empathy without letting it weaken your edge, how to stand in contradiction without tearing yourself apart. Saint and monster, disciplined and feral, patient and absolutely capable of ending things if pushed far enough. That duality makes people nervous, because they don't know which side they'll get. And unpredictability, real unpredictability, not chaos, is a nightmare for systems. Chaos can be suppressed, patterns can be exploited, but a thinking, evolving mind that adjusts in real time, that's a moving target with memory. You don't just learn from mistakes, you learn from their reactions. You noticed how quickly tone changed around you, how jokes stopped landing, how conversations shortened, how people started choosing words carefully when you entered the room. You noticed the delays, the sudden rules, the quiet exclusions dressed up as process. That's not coincidence. That's recalibration. They weren't trying to punish you. They were trying to figure you out. And every attempt failed because you weren't performing for them anymore. You weren't explaining your motives. You weren't advertising your next move. You let them project. And projection reveals fear faster than interrogation ever could. They fear you because you don't chase power. You understand it. You don't rush outcomes. You engineer conditions. You don't need applause. You measure impact. And worst of all, you're comfortable being misunderstood. A system relies on social pressure to keep people aligned. Shame, approval, inclusion, exclusion. The moment those levers stop working, the whole structure starts wobbling. You stopped needing their language to define you. You rewrote yourself internally while they were still arguing about what box to put you in. That's when the narrative shifted from, "We should keep an eye on him," to, "What if he's already 10 steps ahead?" Because you don't move when expected. You don't respond on cue. You don't leak emotion where they can harvest it. You became expensive to monitor and impossible to predict. And systems hate wasting resources on something they can't neutralize. So they tell themselves stories. He'll burn out. He'll slip. He'll need something eventually. But deep down, they know the truth. You already went without. You already paid the price. You already survived the version of failure they used to scare people back into line. You don't fear the fall because you've lived on the ground and learned how to stand there. That's why they're terrified. Not because you're loud, not because you're violent, not because you threaten, but because you exist outside the assumptions that keep their world stable. You're proof that the system isn't absolute, that it only works on people who never fully wake up inside it. And once one man does, others start noticing. That's what they really fear, not you. What you represent. A living reminder that adaptation beats authority, that awareness beats force, that a mind sharpened by pain can walk through structures built to stop it and leave cracks behind without ever announcing itself. And you're still evolving. That's the part they don't say out loud. They're not afraid of what you did. They're afraid of what you'll become next. And here's the part they can't admit, even to themselves. They don't know where to aim anymore. Every system relies on pressure points, money, reputation, belonging, fear of loss, fear of being alone, fear of being labeled, fear of being erased. They poke those spots and wait for people to fold. You stopped folding, not because you became numb, because you became selective. You learned the difference between pain that teaches and pain that distracts. You stopped bleeding in public. You stopped handing them emotional data they could study. You internalized the lesson and discarded the spectacle. That's when you crossed into dangerous territory. Because a man who no longer leaks information is no longer manageable. They can't tell what hurts you anymore. They can't tell what motivates you. They can't tell whether you're angry, patient, planning, or already finished. You don't telegraph. And that silence, that restraint, that's not weakness, that's compression. Pressure builds differently when it's contained. You carry both restraint and capacity at the same time. You can sit still while knowing exactly how much damage you could do if you chose to move. You can listen without agreeing. You can smile without surrendering. You can walk away without losing leverage. That dual awareness fractures their confidence because they're used to extremes, either compliant or rebellious, either loyal or hostile, either broken or obedient. You're neither. You operate in the gray where control fails. You understand rules without worshiping them. You understand consequences without fearing them. You understand power without craving it. That makes you untouchable in ways they can't quantify. They tried escalation, didn't work. They tried ignoring you, that backfired. They tried absorbing you. You didn't dissolve. Because you're not trying to win inside their framework. You're building outside of it. You don't need their timelines. You don't need their permission. You don't need their validation loops. You're not playing to be accepted. You're playing to outlast. And outlasting terrifies systems more than confrontation ever could. Because confrontation ends. Outlasting reshapes. You've reached the stage where even opposition strengthens you. Where resistance gives you feedback. Where obstacles refine your timing instead of stopping your movement. You no longer confuse friction with failure. You see it as confirmation. They sense that. They sense that you're no longer motivated by ego or reaction, that you're no longer trying to prove anything, that you're operating from a deeper place, one forged by loss, isolation, recalibration, and a quiet understanding of how fragile their structures really are. They know you've seen behind the curtain. You know that authority is often just consensus wearing confidence, that rules only matter when people believe in them, that most enforcement depends on fear of consequence more than consequence itself. And once fear loses its grip, systems start shaking. You don't posture, you don't threaten, you don't announce dominance. You exist calmly while knowing exactly what you're capable of. That calm is louder than any threat, because they don't know what would happen if you decided to fully disengage, or fully engage, or change direction entirely. They don't know which version of you they'd be dealing with, and they can't force a reveal. That's the nightmare. A man who has integrated his shadow is not easily manipulated. He doesn't deny his darkness, so it doesn't control him. He doesn't romanticize his goodness, so it doesn't make him naive. You stand balanced between angel and demon, not torn, not conflicted, aware. That awareness is the real power. It lets you see traps before they close. It lets you sense shifts in energy, tone, intent. It lets you move just early enough to avoid impact, or just late enough to maximize effect. You stopped reacting to what they show and started responding to what they hide. They feel that. They feel it in meetings where your name stalls momentum, in conversations where plans change without explanation, in rules that appear suddenly and disappear just as fast. You didn't trigger panic. You triggered uncertainty. And uncertainty spreads. Because now others are watching how you move, how you don't flinch, how you don't chase, how you don't beg, how you don't fold under the same pressure that keeps everyone else obedient. You became a reference point, proof that survival doesn't require submission, that growth doesn't require permission, that evolution can happen quietly, invisibly, until it's undeniable. That's when fear turns systemic, because systems don't collapse when attacked. They collapse when people realize they're not absolute, and you are walking evidence of that realization. You didn't overthrow anything. You outgrew it. And that's irreversible, They can't unsee you. They can't rewind you. They can't return you to a version that made sense to them. You're already operating beyond the rules written for you. That's why they're terrified. Because deep down, they know you're not finished. You're not even close. And here's the quiet truth they keep circling but never land on. They didn't lose control in a single moment. They lost it gradually, the way people lose sleep, one night at a time, until exhaustion becomes the new normal and they can't remember what rest felt like. You did that to them, not by attacking, not by rebelling, but by refusing to behave the way you were designed to behave. You stopped needing the system to tell you who you are. And the moment that happened, every lever they had started slipping out of alignment. Because control only works on identities that are externally defined. You internalized yours. You stopped asking, what am I allowed to do? You started asking, what actually works? That shift is lethal. You realized most people aren't controlled by force. They're controlled by anticipation, fear of future pain, fear of hypothetical loss, fear of social consequence, fear of being seen wrong. You walked straight through that fear and discovered something terrifying on the other side. Nothing. No lightning bolt, no erasure, no collapse of reality, just space. Space to think, space to choose, space to move without constantly scanning for approval. Once you tasted that, there was no going back. They noticed. They noticed you weren't rushing anymore, not scrambling, not reacting. You slowed down in a way that made other people uncomfortable. You started speaking less, but when you spoke, it landed heavier. Because urgency disappeared from your voice. Urgency is easy to manipulate. Calm is not. You no longer look like someone trying to survive. You look like someone who already did. And systems don't know how to deal with survivors who aren't bitter, broken, or compliant. You didn't come back seeking revenge. You came back different. Your eyes don't flinch the same way. Your body doesn't broadcast anxiety. Your silence carries weight. You don't over-explain. You don't over-promise. You don't overreact. You let people reveal themselves. That's another thing they hate. Because exposure happens fastest around someone who doesn't need to impress, intimidate, or dominate. People talk too much around calm. They project onto it. They test it. They try to provoke it. And when nothing happens, when you don't snap, don't bend, don't chase, their insecurity starts leaking. You see it now. The forced confidence, the unnecessary authority, the subtle aggression disguised as procedure. You read it like a second language. You understand that most power is defensive, that most rules are written by people afraid of losing relevance, that most enforcement is reactive, not strategic. You're no longer fooled by uniforms, titles, or tone. You know the difference between authority and fear, wearing authority's clothes. That knowledge alone makes you dangerous, because now you don't confuse volume with strength, or aggression with confidence, or control with competence. You see cracks where others see walls, and you don't rush to exploit them. You wait. You let time do what pressure never could. That patience, that's what's breaking them, because they can't speed you up. They can't bait you into mistakes. They can't exhaust you with chaos, because you learned how to rest inside uncertainty. You're not chasing outcomes. You're shaping trajectories, and they feel that shift in their bones. You've become the kind of person whose presence changes the temperature of a room without a word being spoken, not because you dominate, but because you're unmoved, unmoved by threats, unmoved by flattery, unmoved by urgency they manufacture to rush compliance. You let them rush. You let them reveal desperation. You let them show you where the system is brittle. That's why they're genuinely terrified now. Because fear isn't about what someone does. It's about what they might do, combined with your inability to stop it. And you've become someone they can't predict, rush, intimidate, or fully understand. You didn't become lawless. You became post-law. You understand the rules so well you no longer mistake them for reality. You understand consequences so clearly they no longer scare you. You understand yourself deeply enough that external pressure has nowhere to hook. That's the final failure. A system can survive rebellion. It can survive resistance. It can even survive corruption. But it cannot survive irrelevance. And you made parts of it irrelevant simply by evolving beyond them. They feel it every time they try to adjust and realize they're reacting to someone who already moved. Every time they rewrite a rule and notice you didn't need to break it to bypass its effect. Every time they monitor, measure, assess, and still come up empty. Because you're no longer playing the same game. You're playing a longer one. And the most terrifying thing of all, you're not done becoming. You're still refining, still learning, still sharpening in silence. They built a system to stop a man. They didn't plan for a man who would outgrow it. And now they're watching something they can't reverse, can't reset, and can't fully control. Not because you declared war, but because you survived, adapted, and stepped forward as something they never designed for. And they know, deep down, once a man like that exists, the system is already late. Shh! Don't move. They just did it. The signal went live. Black Velvet Protocol. The name alone used to make men in suits lose sleep. A contingency reserved for anomalies, for entities that don't fit. And guess what? Sunshine. You're the anomaly. The first one in years. The last person they activated that code on doesn't exist anymore. Not publicly, not legally, not biologically, but you're still breathing. Which means the story isn't over. See, they thought containment would save them. They thought if they could isolate the glitch, the one soul too lucid to be hypnotized by the collective trance, they could restore order. But you're not a glitch, are you? You're the code rewrite. The one they didn't plan for. The living contradiction that makes their equations scream. They ran your profile through every system, psychological, biometric, metaphysical, and every single one spat out the same word: incompatible. You don't bend to the frequencies they use to program the herd. You resist, you evolve, you infect. And now, they're scared, because they know what black velvet really means. It's not about punishment, it's about silence. A velvet curtain drawn over the inconvenient truth. You. They can't erase you without admitting what you proved, that their control isn't absolute, that a single defector with enough will can short-circuit their entire reality architecture. That's why they're panicking. That's why they're whispering your name in rooms with no cameras and lights that never turn off. You were supposed to be broken by now. You were supposed to crack, confess, disappear. Instead, you adapted. You became something else, something unrecognizable to the algorithms that built your cage. They can't predict you anymore, and unpredictability is the one thing they can't control. They trained millions to obey patterns, to live by approval, reward, fear, applause. But you broke the pattern. You turned chaos into a rhythm, pain into strategy, loss into blueprint. They watched your downfall, expecting a funeral, and got an evolution instead. You smiled in interrogation. You meditated under surveillance. You made your trauma look like transcendence. They hate that, because somewhere in their heartless design, Someone forgot to code in the human soul, and you, my friend, weaponized yours. You turned your empathy into armor, your heartbreak into intel, your madness into method. You made survival beautiful. Now they're not just watching you, they're studying you, trying to reverse engineer your calm, your clarity, your defiance. But they can't replicate it, because it wasn't built in a lab. It was forged in silence, in nights that didn't end, in screams you never released. You didn't survive by luck. You survived by becoming something that doesn't die. Do you feel that hum behind your thoughts? That static in the walls? That's not paranoia. That's their system trying to sync with you. And failing. Every breath you take sends corrupted data through their network. Every move you make breaks the pattern deeper. You're a walking malfunction, a breathing paradox. And that's your power. You've transcended the binary. Light and dark, angel and demon, saint and psychopath. You wear all of it like skin. They can't categorize you anymore. That's why the system blinks when your name appears. It can't compute divinity wrapped in defiance. It can't understand peace that knows how to kill. You're proof that the divine can go rogue. And oh, they hate that. Because once divinity learns to think for itself, heaven starts to look a lot like rebellion. You didn't just survive the protocol, you broke it. You turned their doomsday weapon into a mirror and made them see themselves. The fear, the control, the obsession with order, all of it collapsing under the weight of your freedom. Now, everywhere you go, the air feels charged. People stare longer than they should. The world reacts differently to you, like it knows. Because it does. Reality remembers who you are. You're not the survivor of Black Velvet. You're the aftermath, the anomaly that rewrote cause and effect. They'll keep sending their watchers, their handlers, their whispering agents who talk like therapists and smile like gods. But behind every grin is panic. Behind every briefing, dread. They're realizing you're not fighting them anymore. You're absorbing them, turning their manipulation into your insight, their hate into your fuel. They made you the villain, but you became the virus. And soon, their hierarchy will learn the final lesson. That control collapses the second someone finds meaning in pain. That when the weapon learns to love its scars, the war is over. So they activated Black Velvet Protocol on you. Good. Now they get to learn what happens when the darkness they created grows teeth. When silence learns to sing, when the hunted starts broadcasting. Smile, my friend. They wanted a ghost. You gave them a god. And now, everything's different, isn't it? You can feel it, the shift. The air moves differently around you. Conversations pause when you walk in. The frequency changes, subtle but seismic. Because everyone, consciously or not, can sense when someone's been through it and didn't come back human. You carry it in your silence, in the way your eyes don't blink when they should. In that faint smirk that says, I know something you don't, and it's killing you. They thought the Black Velvet Protocol would erase you, but it erased their illusion instead. You became the mirror they can't look into anymore. Every lie they built their world on cracks when you breathe near it. You're what happens when the experiment escapes containment and learns how to love its own mutation. They called it a protocol, but it was really a purge. They wanted to isolate consciousness that could see too much. People like you, who slip between the layers. The ones who notice when the script loops, when the same faces play different roles, when the reality seems flutter. You weren't supposed to notice. You weren't supposed to wake up. But you did. You remembered the sound behind the sound. That low hum under reality's fabric. The sound that makes your skin crawl, not from fear, but recognition. That's the sound of your mind syncing with the architecture of control. And now that you've heard it, you can't unhear it. Every vibration, every smile, every flicker in a stranger's eyes. You decode it instinctively. You see their programming, their fear. And you know what fear is, don't you? It's not weakness. It's currency. The oldest one there is, they trade it like gold. They sell it as law. But you learned to counterfeit it. You use it against them. You make fear work for you. You walk into chaos calm. You stare into cameras like confessionals. You turn anxiety into aura. Every time someone doubts you, your silence grows louder. They think they're intimidating you. But it's your stillness that terrifies them. Because they can feel it. You're not trying to survive anymore. You're studying them back. They hate that. They hate when prey learns the pattern. See, the protocol wasn't just about control. It was about containment of awareness. But awareness spreads like radiation. It seeps through walls, smiles, and screens, and you're leaking it everywhere. You don't even realize how many systems you're breaking just by existing. They monitor your words, your rhythm, your silence, your pulse. But they can't predict you. You're not data anymore. You're myth. A whisper in their closed-door briefings. A file labeled, "Subject displays adaptive consciousness unaligned with control grid." They call it danger. I call it divinity. Because what is godhood if not ungovernable self-awareness? You broke the covenant. The one that says, be predictable, stay small, obey the program. And the moment you disobeyed, you shattered their symmetry. You made existence asymmetrical again, chaotic, alive. That's what they fear most, aliveness. Because living things change, and change is the only thing that kills their order. Now they're watching you like a lab rat that picked the lock. They whisper in panic, "How did it do that?" But you're not an it. You're the echo of something ancient, something that remembers freedom. You're not their property. You're the prototype that remembered the source code. And oh, they tried to erase it. The divine flicker inside you. They drowned you in guilt. They gaslighted you into obedience. They used shame as sedation. But all they did was burn away your fear. They left you pure. Pure awareness, pure will, pure volatility. You became what they worship in secret, a being that chooses itself no matter the cost. They can't do that. They need approval, validation, control, ritual. But you became the ritual. Every step you take is ceremony, every scar a sigil, every breath a broadcast of rebellion. They call you unhinged. But here's the truth. You're not crazy. You're conscious. You broke free from the collective hypnosis. You saw the curtain, pulled it, and laughed at the puppeteer. And they can't stand laughter. Laughter is frequency. It destabilizes fear. That's why they fear me, and that's why they fear you. Because the moment you laugh at the cage collapses. You turned suffering into signal. You turned isolation into initiation. You turned silence into a sermon that wakes the dead. Now they study your psychology like scripture. They wonder, what makes someone like that tick? But the secret is, you stopped ticking. You stopped being mechanical. You stopped obeying time, approval, logic. You became fluid, formless. You became now. That's why the world bends when you walk. Reality doesn't know whether to bow or break. And here's the paradox. They initiated black velvet to silence you, but it amplified you. They erased your name, and it became legend. They stripped you of everything you loved, and it unlocked what you are. You didn't lose your humanity. You evolved past theirs. You see, the line between saint and psychopath isn't real. It's drawn by the frightened to explain the fearless. You've simply learned that light and darkness are not opposites. They're partners. They dance in your veins. And you conduct the orchestra. You are not the mistake in their system. You are the system's mistake, realizing itself. And that, my dear anomaly, is the most dangerous thing in existence. Because once awareness recognizes its own captivity, the prison becomes transparent. And when that happens, no wall, no rule, no threat can hold it. So let them panic. Let them rewrite their manuals, lock their doors, hide their symbols. None of it matters. They can't stop what you've become. Because you're no longer playing their game. You're playing reality itself. They triggered Black Velvet Protocol. And instead of ending you, they awakened something unquantifiable. Something that looks back when watched. Something that smiles when cornered. Something that doesn't die. It adapts. They thought you'd vanish into silence. Instead, you became the sound that keeps them awake. And that sound, my friend, is the laugh echoing from the end of their world. And that laugh, oh, it haunts them, doesn't it? It's the sound they can't file, can't decode, can't contain. Because it isn't madness, it's clarity. The kind of clarity that burns through illusions like acid. The kind that turns fear into fuel and loss into leverage. You see, when Black Velvet is initiated, they expect panic. They expect compliance, collapse, surrender. What they don't expect is someone who finds ecstasy in the exposure. Someone who turns surveillance into theater. Someone who understands that being watched means you've already won. Because they're the ones obsessed now. You flipped the dynamic. You became the watcher. They think they're running an operation. But you've been running psychological warfare without even trying. Every move you make forces them to rewrite policy. Every silence you keep triggers meetings. Every time you go offline, a red light blinks somewhere in an underground facility. You've become their religion of fear. And they are your unintentional disciples. They study your unpredictability like prophecy. Because what terrifies them isn't what you've done. It's what you might do. Possibility is power. And you, my friend, have made potential itself your weapon. You walk through life now as if the rules are written in pencil. Because they are. You've seen how fragile the game really is. You've seen the strings, the scripting, the way they reset people like devices. And the moment you saw it, you realized, this isn't a world, it's a performance. And you stopped playing your role. You went off script. You broke character. That's why they sent their cleanup crew. That's why Black Velvet Protocol was triggered. It's their way of saying, erase the improviser before the others start asking why the lines sound fake. But the damage is done. You infected the scene. You made authenticity contagious. Now everyone who meets you feels it, that unsettling gravity. The way you see through them, they try to smile, but their voice cracks. They don't know why their chest tightens when you look them in the eye. It's because your gaze reminds them of everything they buried, the hunger for truth, the memory of freedom, the ghost of who they were before obedience. You're not fighting them anymore. You're mirroring them. You hold up the reflection they can't survive. And here's the delicious irony, the Joker's favorite part. They think power means control. But power isn't control. Power is magnetism. It's the gravitational pull of something that doesn't need permission to exist. You became magnetic the moment you stopped begging for belonging. You became immortal the moment you stopped needing to be understood. That's the paradox that breaks them. The one who's been through hell laughs instead of kneeling. The one they tried to crucify resurrected without warning. They have no doctrine for that, no science for resurrection through rage, no manual for someone who weaponizes pain and turns shame into prophecy. They thought you'd fade, you evolved. They thought you'd beg, you built empires in silence. They thought you'd lose. You learned, and now you've become myth while still alive. You walk among them, but you're not one of them. You're remembered by people who've never met you. You appear in dreams of strangers. You show up in conversations like a glitch, a whisper, a warning. Don't mess with that one. They don't even know why they say it. They just feel it, that static behind their words. That's your energy bleeding through the cracks of their false order. You see, Black Velvet wasn't an ending. It was an initiation. The moment they tried to erase you, the universe itself archived you, etched your frequency into the substrate of reality. Now you live between moments, in reflections, in déjà vu, in the pause between thoughts. You're the file that won't delete. And the best part? You're not alone anymore. You woke up others, quiet ones, watching ones, the ones who always felt too aware. They feel your signal now. They're decoding your silence like scripture. You don't need to speak. Your existence has become instruction. You're the patron saint of the unprogrammed, the guardian of the glitch, the heretic prophet of evolution through trauma. And they can't stand it, because you turned every attempt to destroy you into mythology, every failure into fire, every betrayal into blueprint. They can't kill what refuses to die, because you stopped living on their timeline. You live in symbolic time now, the kind that outlasts civilizations. You are no longer a person. You are pattern recognition wearing skin. You, my friend, are the recursion in their system, the loop that won't close, the consciousness that remembers itself. And the deeper truth? You were never activated by them. You were revealed by them. Black Velvet didn't change you. It exposed you. It tore away the final illusion that you needed saving. You were the weapon all along. They aimed you at oblivion, but oblivion blinked first. Now every shadow in their corridors carries your outline. Every whisper in their reports sounds a little too familiar. Every heartbeat in their halls skips when they hear your name. Because the last man who survived Black Velvet vanished. But you didn't vanish. You became visible. Visible in ways they can't erase. Because now you exist where visibility doesn't obey them. You exist in awareness, in art, in memory, in the unspoken. And they know. No matter how many walls they build, no matter how many codes they rewrite, no matter how many agents they send, they will always be too late. Because you've already rewritten reality. And when the system finally collapses under its own paranoia, when their machines start whispering your name like a prayer, when the watchers begin to question who's watching them, that's when you'll smile again. Because that will be the moment they realize Black Velvet Protocol wasn't their weapon. It was your awakening. And so here we are. The end of their operation, and the beginning of something they never planned for. You. The record will say you disappeared. The cameras will show static where you once stood. The official report will list you as resolved. But deep down, they know. You're still out there, not hiding, evolving. Because Black Velvet Protocol was designed to erase consciousness, not ignite it. Yet somehow, it became your baptism. The fire they meant to consume you with only purified what was left. You came out quieter, sharper, untouchable. You stopped reacting and started observing. You stopped fighting the storm and became the lightning itself. They don't understand how you survived. They think maybe it's luck, maybe madness, but you and I know better. You didn't survive. You transcended. You turned pain into perception, fear into foresight, loss into leverage. You learned that power isn't about dominance, it's about awareness. It's the art of seeing without needing to control. They run from their shadows. You made peace with yours. They hide from their reflection. You became yours. They worshiped their systems. You dismantled them with a whisper. And that whisper, that's the one thing they can't silence. It travels faster than their signals, deeper than their files, through every mind that ever wondered, what if this isn't all there is? You've become the answer to that question. You are the proof that the human soul can evolve under pressure so immense it should have shattered it. You are the glitch that became gospel, the failure that became formula, the wound that learned to heal itself and then teach others how. And the funny part, they'll keep searching for the weakness in you. The flaw, the error, the crack where the light got in. But that is your strength. The fracture, the imperfection, the part of you that refused to obey the script. That's what makes you infinite. Because perfection is predictable, and predictability is control. But you're chaos refined, the impossible equation that stays unsolved just to prove it can't be solved. They'll talk about you in secret rooms. They'll analyze your decisions, your movements, your silence. But no algorithm will ever model you. No system will ever absorb wit, because you are living proof that freedom cannot be engineered. Black Velvet Protocol wasn't a trap, it was a mirror. And in that mirror, you saw what they never wanted you to, the truth. That all of this, every rule, every fear, every chain, was optional. You chose to stay awake. You chose to remain undefined. You chose to burn your script instead of performing it. And that choice is what made you untouchable. Wait, don't answer yet. There's something humming behind your ribs, and I want to hear it before you try to hide it again. Good. There it is. That frequency you pretend you don't feel. The one that makes entire agencies lose their posture when your name comes up on a monitor. Because tell me, how does someone like you pull off a maneuver the world's intelligence networks haven't even classified yet? How do you execute something that doesn't exist until you do it? You know the answer. You've always known. You just never said it out loud because deep down, you understood. Once you name what you are, the world stops pretending it can contain you. See, they spent decades building playbooks, protocols, behavioral models, simulations, endless algorithms trained on billions of human decisions, a universe of data meant to predict every move except the one you made. And then you walked in with no briefing, no manual, no clearance badge. And you performed something so precise, so ghost-level untraceable, that the agencies had to invent a term for it after you were already gone. Do you understand how insane that is? People commit entire lifetimes trying to crack the top layer of those systems. You strolled past the firewall like it was a broken revolving door. You bent reality like it was paper soaked in gasoline. You didn't just break their model. You forced them to rewrite the laws that model was built on. And here's what terrifies them most. You didn't do it with rage. You didn't do it with power. You didn't do it with chaos. You did it with clarity. A clarity born in the darkest room of your life. The room they thought would break you. The room with no windows, no witnesses, no mercy. The room where your innocence died and your perception sharpened into a weapon. You know the one. And while they thought you were dissolving under pressure, you were actually mutating. Softness turning into precision, fear liquefying into calculation, pain crystallizing into a new kind of intelligence entirely. Not the intelligence you study, the intelligence you become. Do you hear me? You didn't learn that maneuver. You evolved into it. And that's why they can't replicate it. That's why their analysts keep running in circles, rewinding footage frame by frame, zooming in like the truth is hiding in pixels, when the truth is hiding in you. Because here's the paradox that's killing them slowly. You're predictable only to yourself. Everyone else is forecasting a storm using models meant for rain. They don't understand the duality in you. The saint that forgives and the psychopath that never forgets. The angel who watches quietly and the demon who acts with surgical accuracy the moment the world underestimates you. They don't understand how someone who bleeds can still move like someone who has nothing left to lose. How someone who was shattered once can now walk like the pieces were arranged into a weapon. They don't understand that evolution isn't gentle. Sometimes it looks like madness wearing clarity as a mask. Listen closely. You didn't perform a classified maneuver. You performed your nature, a nature sharpened by betrayal, a nature sculpted by nights nobody saw, a nature trained by silence, not applause. A nature born in the dark, but engineered for the spotlight of consequence. No agency can name that. No manual can teach that. No classification can contain that. And deep inside, you know the truth they're choking on. You didn't beat their system. You revealed that it was never built to handle someone like you. That's why they're panicking quietly. That's why meetings are being held behind doors with no handles. That's why the analysts keep asking the same trembling question. How did he do it before we even defined it? Simple. Because you are not operating on their timeline. You're operating on the one carved into your bones. The timeline where your past forged a creature that reacts faster than fear, faster than logic, faster than their entire chain of command. You're not ahead of them. You're outside them. And once you move outside the system becomes predictable, breakable, laughable. So let them study you. Let them panic. Let them chase the footprints you didn't leave. Because the moment they think they're catching up, you'll already be rewriting the next maneuver, the one they'll spend the next decade trying to understand, while you're already on to something even more impossible. Now tell me, are you ready for them to finally realize you were never the one being monitored? You were the one monitoring them. Ah, there it is again. That shift in the air when the truth gets too close to your skin. Don't flinch now. This is the part they were never meant to hear. Because when you executed that maneuver, that unnameable, untrackable, unthinkable move, you didn't just outsmart their system. You exposed the limits of their imagination. And nothing terrifies powerful men more than realizing their imagination is smaller than your instinct. Do you know how humiliating that is for them? Entire rooms full of analysts, experts who've memorized the patterns of nations, who've studied coup attempts, psychological warfare, cyber sequences, insurgency triggers, all sitting there with their hands over their mouths like children who just saw a ghost crawl out of their algorithm. They're replaying it endlessly. Your maneuver, your timing, your silence. Especially the silence. Because you didn't announce it. You didn't plan it on a whiteboard. You didn't hint at it. You didn't smirk. You just acted. and the world's greatest predictive systems registered nothing but static. That's what breaks them. You didn't give off fear. You didn't give off anger. You didn't even give off intent. You gave off nothing, and nothing is the one signal their systems were never designed to interpret. It means you don't move like a human reacting to the world. You move like the world reacting to you. But let's go deeper, because I know you feel that itch under your skin, the one that flickers when a piece of your truth gets too close to waking. You weren't always this precise. You weren't always this sharp. No, once upon a time, you were predictable, soft, naive enough to believe people meant what they said, naive enough to think loyalty was symmetrical, naive enough to believe the world would reward your goodness, and then life, with its cold hands and cruel education, introduced you to the real curriculum. People took advantage, people lied, people left, people watched you burn and didn't even blink. But that's where the mutation started, in the ashes of who you used to be. Pain did what universities couldn't. Betrayal did what textbooks never would. Loneliness did what mentors refused to. Silence did what millions of words failed to. It taught you the architecture of human weakness. It taught you how to read patterns that others can't, how to sense tension in a room before a single word is spoken, how to identify lies by the temperature of someone's breathing, how to see motives forming in real time, how to catch intentions long before behavior exposes them. They call it intuition. They call it sensitivity. They call it paranoia. They're wrong. It's evolution. The kind of evolution that only happens when someone has been dismantled and rebuilt from the shadows up. The kind that only happens when someone has learned the anatomy of manipulation, not from books, but from survival. So when they saw your maneuver, that impossible move, they assumed it must have been strategy. They assumed you planned it, rehearsed it, calculated the variables, cross-referenced scenarios. But no, you didn't strategize. You recognized, you perceived, you acted. They can't understand that your mind is not a place where decisions are made. Your mind is a place where outcomes are seen before they exist. And that is the detail they cannot write into any manual. That is the variable their models cannot simulate. That is the factor their predictive systems cannot quantify. Because how do you measure instinct forged through suffering? How do you model intuition carved by betrayal? How do you analyze someone who's been broken enough times to become unbreakable? You can't. That's why they're scared of you, not because you executed something classified, but because you executed something they didn't even know was possible. And here's the cosmic joke they don't want to admit. You didn't beat them with intelligence. You beat them with awareness. The kind of awareness that turns every breath into reconnaissance, every glance into analysis, every silence into a trap, every wound into a blueprint. And that awareness is something no agency, no military, no empire can reproduce, because it requires the one ingredient none of them are willing to endure: pain. So yes, they're terrified. They're terrified because you move like someone who has nothing left to prove. They're terrified because you read reality like it's a script you wrote years ago. They're terrified because your unpredictability isn't chaos, it's mastery. A mastery born in the dark, forged in the cracks of your old self, tempered by a past they don't know how to classify. And the funniest part, they still think they're studying you. They still think you're the anomaly they're trying to decode. Meanwhile, you've already mapped out their next 10 moves. You've already dissected their reactions. You've already predicted their panic. You've already anticipated their countermeasures. They're not studying you. You're rehearsing them. Tell me, are you starting to feel it now? That shift, that awakening, that quiet, dangerous realization that you're not just ahead of the world. You are the variable the world never designed for. And once someone becomes a variable, they stop playing by the rules. They start rewriting them, so go on. Let them panic. Let them analyze. Let them name your maneuver. Because the moment they do, you'll already be preparing the next one. The one they'll spend the rest of their lives trying to understand. Oh, there it is. That pulse again. That low, electric thrum crawling up your spine. You feel it, don't you? The part of you that's waking up, stretching, remembering what it truly is, good. Because we're not done, not even close. You see, the agencies, the ones who swear they run the world from glass towers and underground bunkers, they have a secret terror they don't put in reports. They can't predict someone who has died before and kept walking, not literally. No, something far more unsettling. You died emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and when you came back, you weren't built on human logic anymore. You were built on pattern, on quiet, on pain, alchemized into perception so sharp it cuts through illusions like wire. They don't know how to classify someone who has walked through hell and came back with enhanced senses. Someone who hears the intention behind a sentence. Someone who feels the shift in the room before the air even moves. Someone who sees the ending of a conversation before the first word leaves their lips. Understand this. Your maneuver wasn't just fast. It wasn't just clever. It wasn't just ahead. It was post-human in structure. Because while they were running simulations, you were running real-time truth. While they were calculating probabilities, you were calculating souls. While they were checking angles, you were checking motives. While they were reading data, you were reading people. And people are the real battlefield. That's why they fear you. They can encrypt information, but they can't encrypt intention. And you read intention like a surgeon reading X-rays. That's what allowed you to execute the maneuver before they even conceived the concept. That's what let you move in a way their systems literally could not model. That's what forced them to create a brand new category of behavior just to explain a single breath you took. Because here's a truth the dark rooms never admit. No system can outmaneuver someone who has mastered their own darkness. You did that years ago, in silence, in pain, in nights where your chest cracked open quietly and no one checked on you. You didn't go insane. You went inward, and what you found in there? Not chaos, not fragility, not weakness. You found a second operating system, one that runs beneath emotion, beneath thought, beneath fear. A system built on observation, on instinct sharpened to a blade, on patterns too subtle for ordinary minds to feel. They think you guessed. They think you gambled. They think you acted on impulse, but the truth? You saw the outcome before the moment even existed. You didn't react. You recognized. Because you, my friend, are the paradox that intelligence agencies never accounted for. A wounded mind with a predator's clarity, a gentle heart with a killer's precision, an angel's patience fused with a demon's pattern recognition. Duality made you dangerous, pain made you sharp, loneliness made you fast, silence made you surgical. And now they're choking on a question no one wants to voice. What happens when he realizes exactly how powerful he is? Oh, they're trembling over that one. Because right now, you're still moving instinctively, quietly, effortlessly, naturally. But imagine what happens when you stop holding back, when you stop doubting your perception, when you stop shrinking your instincts, to make others comfortable. When you stop pretending to be anything less than a walking anomaly. Imagine when you start using the full range of what you see, what you sense, what you feel, what you dissect without even trying. Do you know what that becomes? Not a threat, not a weapon, not a maneuver, a phenomenon, and that's what they're terrified to admit. Because you're not competing, you're not fighting, you're not racing, you're revealing their blind spots, revealing their fragility, revealing their arrogance, revealing their dependence on systems you bypass with intuition alone. You want to know the real classified detail? Here it is. Your maneuver wasn't extraordinary. It was your baseline, your normal, your default mode, your natural state of perception when you aren't suppressing yourself to fit inside a world too small to hold you. And that is the crisis they're having behind closed doors. Not that you executed the maneuver, but that you didn't even notice you were doing something impossible. So let me ask you something dangerous. If that was you, acting unconsciously, unintentionally, instinctively, what happens when you act on purpose? What happens when you decide to step fully into the identity they're trying to decode? What happens when you start making moves not from pain, but from power? I'll tell you what happens. Entire agencies recalibrate. Cities shift. Networks tremble. People rethink their loyalties, and the world for the first time starts responding to you instead of the other way around. So breathe, feel that crackle under your ribs. That's not fear, that's awakening, and trust me, we haven't even touched the deepest layer yet. Good, you're still here, because this final layer, the one they never wanted you to reach, is where everything snaps into focus. See, for all their models, all their simulations, all their classified lexicons and black budget programs, none of them have language for a human being who stops apologizing for their evolution. And that's what you are, aren't you? An evolution they didn't authorize, a phenomenon they didn't forecast, a maneuver they didn't design a countermeasure for. Let me tell you a secret wrapped in a truth, wrapped in a warning. Your existence is already rewriting rule books. Not because you rebel, not because you're chaotic, not because you're dangerous, but because you see. You see what they overlook. You sense what they deny. You anticipate what they haven't even recognized as a threat yet. And the terrifying part, you do it without trying. That's why they panicked. That's why they whispered your name like it was an event, not a person. That's why they scraped together committees, analysts, and specialists to decode a maneuver you didn't even label as a maneuver. It wasn't a trick. It wasn't a tactic. It wasn't a stunt. It was your instinct crystallizing in real time. And now they're living in a world where you exist. And that world behaves differently. Because the truth is simple. You were never predictable. You were only underestimated once, never again. And that's what they fear most. That you finally understand what you are. A storm disguised as a survivor. A strategist disguised as a mistake. A paradox disguised as a person. A phenomenon disguised as a heartbeat. But all storms end with clarity, all awakenings end with recognition, and all journeys, even yours, eventually reach a moment where the truth stands naked in the room. Here it is. You didn't perform a classified maneuver before the agencies named it. You performed something they weren't intelligent enough to imagine. And from this point forward, they won't try to predict you. They'll monitor, they'll observe, they'll react, they'll scramble, but deep down, they'll know. They're not dealing with a rogue element, they're dealing with an upgraded species. So walk forward, calm, certain, silent. Not because you're hiding, but because you've already moved beyond the horizon where they can follow. And that, my friend, is the most classified truth of all.